I'm Rosie Osser, energy engineer with WSP Built Ecology. And I'm going to start off with an arrogant claim that I have the first green building themed stand-up comedy act. That's right, folks, it's engineering humor, so set your standards low. As low as the carbon emissions you need to avoid getting fined in New York City. My first shot at this was a couple of years ago in my hometown of Boston. I'll be shamelessly recycling some of the jokes, but we're the green building people, so recycling is good, right? It's like the jokes have lower embodied carbon. So, let's start with a stuffy academic review of the existing body of work in the artistic genre of building engineering humor. Yes. How about that billboard on the highway in Connecticut that says, "Your wife is hot. Fix your air conditioner." Not bad. Or if we go back to prehistoric times, 2006, we have the ASHRAE rap video, "License to Chill." Ugh. But yeah, there's not much out there. But what really motivates me to bring performing arts and engineering together? Personal glory. You see, the arts are so competitive that when you find an artistic genre with absolutely no competition, green building themed stand-up comedy, you just barge in and take over. I mean, look at this amazing audience. I didn't even have to compete with other pathetic amateur comics to get a spot at some grungy open mic where I would have had to completely cut all the energy code jokes. Plus, with you guys, I can even take out a psychometric chart to check if the jokes are too dry. That was a reenactment of my engineering license exam. But yeah, there's got to be about 500 times more competition in other kinds of performing arts, like opera singing, for example. By the way, I'm also an opera singer. Are there any other opera singers here tonight? This is New York City, so you know, there are opera singers lurking around, blending in, just waiting for the chance to sing way too loudly at somebody's birthday party. But opera singing and engineering together doesn't really make much sense, but it's really the only choice for someone like me who's deeply motivated to stop climate change and also has an intense burning passion for getting on stage with a live orchestra singing Mozart while cross-dressing as that obnoxious lovesick page boy. Look, I am aware that high schoolers who decide to major in mechanical engineering aren't usually environmentalist theater nerds. No, they're the kids who watch Star Wars and they want to learn how to fabricate an induction intake charger that will double the output coefficient of an induction booster for a spaceship. But I figured that my general interest in science and the fact that I had memorized Monty Python and the Holy Grail would be enough to survive mechanical engineering. Things got a little rough in grad school when I found out that graduate studies at MIT weren't just about hanging around with other misfit nerds, solving puzzles, and singing musical theater while dressed as a historically accurate medieval unicorn wizard. No, it turned out the academic expectations involved a dimly lit basement laboratory containing the terrifying wreckage of the previous grad student's electromechanical device. The plot summary is that some of my theater friends who are also software and electrical engineers helped me debug my thesis project so that we could all get back to our show rehearsal in time. So I emerged from grad school with confidence that engineering and theater do belong together. I settled into my first cubicle designing trash storage room air conditioners and garage exhaust systems. I was trained to print and throw out enormous stacks of paper drawings because of minor title block formatting errors. This reluctant contribution to global deforestation was a great fit for hanging around with a bunch of guys that said climate change was a scam and that they idled their SUVs in the parking lot on purpose to annoy tree huggers like me. Later, I was mocked relentlessly for leaving the HVAC department to pursue my modeling career, energy modeling. I learned to use eQuest to model the overwhelming number of tiny details that affect building energy use. And I got into my first friendly debates with architects about whether floor-to-ceiling glass is good for daylighting, or if we just get more envelope heat transfer, solar glare problems, and mess up bird migration just so the building can glow like a magic beacon all night long. The beacons are lit. Gondor calls for aid. Now, here in New York City, we can still get permits for those all-glass projects. But back in Boston, the Passive House folks are running the show. Under our Massachusetts stretch code, everything is so well insulated, we can heat a 10-story office building using only the warmth in our hearts we feel from helping the planet. I don't follow sports, so I had to have some kind of silly Boston versus New York rivalry thing here. But getting back to trying to fit in at work, besides being a tree-hugging, non-sports-watching, cross-dressing opera singer, it turns out that the engineering field is actually male-dominated. But I never thought much of it when at one point earlier in my career, I happened to be the only woman in a department of 10 people. One day I said to the guys, "Do you want to go to this sandwich shop for lunch?" They said, oh, sorry, we're all too busy today with deadlines. Okay. They then waited for me to get up from my desk before bolting out the door for a 3-hour lunch break without me at Hooters. Now, I actually found that really offensive because I understand that Hooters is an owl-themed restaurant. And as an environmentalist, I'd like to learn more about owls too. But being different from the standard engineers has some advantages. Since I actually like to get up in front of people to give talks, while most normal engineers hate it, I get a lot of opportunities to give presentations. But it really escalated when I was invited last year to speak at an energy conference at Gillette Stadium. Naturally, I assumed I would be explaining my favorite decarbonization project examples in the main arena, like when Taylor Swift was there. But then, not only does my department unfairly reject my expense report for a custom sequin leotard and backup dancers, but it turns out it's just in the conference center they have attached to the stadium. Fine, I shake it off. But I'm reading the conference program, and it turns out that the perk for attendees is that some of the Patriots cheerleaders might be there. Cheerleaders are assumed to be of interest to the demographic of humans that typically attend conferences on the topic of commercial building energy management. This just gets me fixated on some feminist grievance, like the fact that cheerleaders are paid minimum wage, or that the insulation value of their uniforms could be insufficient to maintain thermal comfort in winter design conditions. Because I prepared this routine according to formulae, I rehearsed comebacks for hecklers. But I went one step further by preparing heckles myself, in case you folks were too polite to give me a hard time. This is an engineering concept called redundancy, which is also known as designing for an independent backup system. Let me just try out a couple here. Why are you here instead of finishing my energy modeling report? I'll get back to you during business hours. Forget you saw me here. I would rather go to a 4-hour enclosure mildew workshop than listen to your jokes. So would I, but those classes always fill up. And that's why we're both here like losers. I better wrap up. So I want to say thank you to Katie for actually trusting that I would do a green building themed stand-up comedy instead of sneaking in a concert of my favorite French and Italian opera arias. C'est l'amour, l'amour vainqueur, donne poète, donne cœur. What that meant is that we need an operatic level of passion to cut building carbon emissions to zero and save our planet. Watch out, folks, because as soon as I get NYSERDA sponsorship, I'm going to be back up here with green building-themed musical theater song parodies. Everyone, thank you for being here. Stay motivated and build the weird career path of your dreams.